Hi everyone, I'm Angelo Chacon, and today we'll be talking about testamentary capacity. We'll be discussing testamentary capacity and its significance. By the end of this lesson, you will understand its definition, legal requirements, and basics of the clinical evaluation process. Testamentary capacity. This term refers to the testator's competence to execute a valid will. This is speaking about the person creating the will. Therefore, the testator must be alive. However, we will also be discussing what protocols to follow if the testator is dead. In any instance where an individual is getting to a point where a will needs to be talked about, their testamentary capacity is very important. Within the will, you discuss about the distribution of your property, money, and any other significant belonging that you would like to hand down to specific people. It is important that the testator is aware and able to understand who and what is receiving what they put in their will and are satisfied with it. In an example of Miss Kohler, where she decided to only give $1 of a sizable estate to her only child and the rest to the church she attended. We know she was of testamentary capacity because she was able to create her own will. So to start off, we have the legal requirements. So testators must follow 4 legal requirements to be considered off sound mind. The first is to understand the time of making their wills. The second is nature and extent of their property. The fourth is to know the natural objects of their property. And the fourth is to understand the manner in which the wills they are making distribute their property. If all 4 requirements are not met, the testator will not have the capability of creating their own will. Based on these 4 requirements, the testator does not have to remember every detail, every person, or everything there is to know about their property. It is understandable to forget about the specifics of your belongings. As an example, the will won't be invalidated if you forget long lost relatives who you never were close with. This also includes that the testator is diagnosed with mental illness or is currently living with any addictions. As long as they meet those same 4 standards, they are legally allowed to construct their own will. Also, no matter the reasoning behind why the testator's property is handed out a certain way is completely up to them. With Miss Kohler, it is surprising to read that she had her suspicions that her own daughter was conspiring to kill her by putting glass in a pudding cup. Miss Kohler continued to describe that she had never gotten along with her daughter or her husband and did feel resentment towards them. So Miss Kohler, who is off sound mind, decided not to share her estate based on those experiences. Miss Kohler's choices are to be respected and not disputed. You may find it weird as to why someone would decide to give away their estates to companies or anywhere else than their own family. Even if that is what the testators want to do, just because the family believes it could be a mistake, it would be violating the law. There should be no blame on the clinician because their job is to solely gather the information. Then, you must also make sure there is no evidence that a third party is heavily influencing the testator. The testator should demonstrate that their distributions are from their own mind and decision making. Moving along, we have the clinical evaluation of testamentary capacity. There are 4 guidelines to follow with a clinical evaluation, which follows a similar format of the legal guidelines. The first is the testator's knowledge of making a will. The second is knowledge of nature and extent of property. The third is knowledge of natural objects of bounty, and the fourth is knowledge of the manner in which the property is disposed. First, we'll look at the testator knowledge of making a will. Ensure that you establish that the testator has a basic concept of what a will is and what it does. Question them about any past wills that could have been made. The most important is why the testator is deciding to create a will at this time. This will be able to uncover if there are third-party influences and meet the first legal requirement that the testator knows that they are participating in constructing a will. You may be wondering, what if the testator is not alive? The existence of a will is enough to demonstrate that the testator understood the concept of what a will is. Next, we have the knowledge of nature and extent of property. In the case of where the testator is alive, you will ask open-ended questions of information about the person's property holdings. Property holdings can include occupation, salary, personal possessions, bank accounts, and living accommodations. Those questions can look like, please describe your financial assets for me. What other property do you own? Etc. This will allow for the testator to describe their estates in their own words and confirm that the assets are real. If the testator is dead, there is not much to know about the exact circumstances of the will's preparation. The legal fact finder will determine the testator's knowledge in this area. Then there's the knowledge of natural objects of bounty. Forensic examiners would be the most useful in this aspect to determine the testator's actual values and preferences. If the testator is alive, they can identify their family members and friends. They'll be able to describe their relationship with each of these individuals. When it comes to distributing the property to certain people, having concrete evidence that the person kept in contact with the testator will offer further clues to the testator's awareness and intentions towards family members. Finally, the testator's knowledge of the manner in which the property is disposed. The testator will ask questions about the general consequences of property dispositions. For example, if the woman only leaves a few dollars monthly out of a big sum of money to her daughter, does she understand the impact of her decision? The testator most likely questioned Miss Kohler about the amount she had left to her daughter. When Miss Kohler was able to describe why she made that decision, she demonstrated her testator's knowledge in this aspect. If the testator is dead, this is where problems can arise. The clinician should focus on discovering the factors that led to the particular choices. So, in conclusion, there have been numerous of will consultations due to testamentary incapacity. Some of the factors include blended family structures and increasing size of intergenerational wealth transfers and many cognitive impairments. Clinical opinion can lead to errors and misapplying concepts such as delusions and cognitive impairments. Clinicians should be able to provide useful information to the courts through psychological and physical examinations. Attached, you will find a video describing another scenario of testamentary capacity. Use the insights you have learned through this lecture and apply it to the video. With that being said, it is important to understand the depth and uncertainty of testamentary capacity, not only for our loved ones, but also for ourselves when we enter that stage in our lives. And as a final slide, here's a question that I have for you all. Is to compare and contrast two factors as to why there are increases in will consultation based on the information you have learned from the lecture. Which factor do you think is most prominent in our society today and why? Thank you all.